I am going to be leading a panel, or moderating a panel, in regards to handle with care, and so I'm gonna invite some individuals up here, and you're probably wondering why I am, the moderator. I actually went to a conference 2 years ago, so I'm an expert now. No, I did go to that conference, and I was really, moved by what was happening nationally and the leadership that District Attorney Cruz and Jen Cantwell have taken in implementing that here in Plymouth County, and am a huge supporter of this because it makes a difference. And the most vulnerable individuals we are caring about, and we are helping them through the most traumatic times. And it's just makes me proud to know that our DA's office has taken such an integral role in this. So with that, I'd like to invite the 4 panelists up. That's Christopher Anderson, Emergency Service Coordinator from the Brockton Fire Department, Superintendent Michael Nelson, Old Rochester Regional School District, and then I would like to invite Chief Richard Nigelli, Marion Chief of Police, and Dr. Gina Williams, Assistant Superintendent, East Bridgewater Public Schools. Please take seats. So the goal here is to give everyone, for those of you who may not have a Handle with Care program, is how do you start a program up? What do you do? What should a community be thinking about as they try to implement these strategies? And so one of the first questions I think I want to ask is, to anyone, I open up to any of you, is when did you start your Handle with Care program? So anybody want to pipe in on when you started your Handle with Care program?
Hi everyone, Mike Nelson, Superintendent of Schools. Before I answer the question, I just want to give a shout out to one of our school resource officers, Officer Lima, who is just a rock star. And I just want to the second opening remark is that Chief Nigelli, who I work very closely with, if he calls me before 6 a.m. is for one of 2 reasons. Either we're thinking about a snow day, or we're going to talk about Handle with Care. So. Our program in Marion, Mattapoisett, and Rochester started about 4 or 5 years ago in terms of us committing to the practice, and the process was actually pretty straightforward, which I think helped get buy-in from the administrators and the staff members and the stakeholders that we would need it from. After exploring it, having a good understanding of how we would roll it out, the onboarding was really happened pretty quickly. And what I think the most important piece for us in terms of getting it up and running was actually the conversations with the administration and then the clinical team that serve our schools, and then establishing crystal clear communication protocols of when a Handle with Care notification comes in, who it goes to internally to school staff, and then how it's distributed amongst the buildings to make sure there's no breakdown in terms of communication from one player to the next. And if I could give any advice to a school district or a police department that is considering that, is to make sure that not only do you have a clear understanding of what the programming is, but get good examples of what procedures other districts who have done this successfully have been able to do. Thank you.
Anyone else want to share in regards to how they have been able to, when they started and how they've been able to implement the process?
Sure. Gina Williams, East Bridgewater Public Schools. I have to give a shout out to our SRO as well, Talitha Connor, and our comfort dog, Morgan, who's here with her. And to echo the sentiments, we started in 2016. It was brought to us by our former police chief, Scott Allen. Scott and I went to college together, so I think it really came down to having already a trusting relationship between the police department and the school department. Because I think a lot of the coordination has to rely on trust and communication between the 2 departments, putting egos aside, making sure we all have a role and that we all play an important part in what goes on within our community. So I believe it's sustained that way as well. Even though Scott Allen is no longer our chief, the bond that we have with our police department on a regular basis, whether it be our Handle with Care or anything going on with the community, we know each other are just a phone call away. And we realize it's not always perfect, but we just keep going. We make adjustments as we need to. And as we talk further, I can talk about some of the adjustments that we've made over the years after initially starting. But what was most important, I think, is having people trained in ACEs, getting our staff to be knowledgeable in what is going on with these students and understanding that academics is not necessarily the priority for students, and it can't always be the priority for our educators.
I represent fire, so I'm totally different than everyone here. My job is the EMS coordinator, which basically that means I'm in charge of all the medical aspects of the fire department in Brockton. Brockton is very large. We have, Mike, what do we have, 4,000 kids at Brockton High? All right, 4,000 kids. So my job is to express to the firefighters that when they go on a call, that they need to contact me and let me know, okay, we saw some children at this call, something negative happened, here's what the impact may or may not be. We have a Handle with Care program. Obviously, we have a form that they fill out, it gets to me, and then my job from there is actually to get to the school resources officer. So that's how we handle it from my perspective. I've only been doing this for about 1.5 years now, so it's continuing to develop. And the best thing that I can say in regards to what you said is always the communication. I can just pick up the phone, I call Mike, hey, listen, here's what's going on. And the nice thing is, Mike's daughter and my daughter played softball together, so I've known him for a very long time. So even though Brockton is so big, there are so many little connections that happen all the time that makes it so much easier.
Thank you. And clearly what strikes me is that collaboration with education and our public safety departments. That really is the key in understanding that, the care that is happening. And so I do appreciate it. It's evident, and that's why it's working here. So for those of you who've had the program going a little bit longer, how would you say that, it's changed over that period of time? Because obviously you started, it's relatively new. You've tried to implement it. What are some of the changes that you've had to implement over the period of time?
Well, I guess I'll take this one. I missed the first question, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I was quick to pass the mic, so.
That was
Probably shouldn't have passed it.
fault.
No, it was my fault. I passed it quick. So just to go back a little bit from the police department standpoint. So initially we signed an MOU with the school district, and obviously it's easy to implement a program like this when you have strong leadership. So strong leadership from the superintendent's office to the district attorney. To the sheriff. So we're super fortunate here in Plymouth County. But we signed an MOU. We put a policy in place at the police department. So we're an accredited police department. So we have a policy for our policy. So it's only fitting we had a policy for this. So the policy that we put out, in some of the guidelines. So like the superintendent said, you need those guidelines, or people aren't going to know what to follow. So. The biggest challenge for us is identifying the kids at the calls. So, it's for my law enforcement colleagues, it's one extra step. And I know from being on calls, a lot of us years ago would think they would show up to some of these calls with these kids, and it would, you would think to yourself, oh, they're gonna have a really tough day tomorrow. And we knew they were gonna have a tough day tomorrow, but there was no mechanism in place for us to notify the school departments. So you'd always just cross your fingers and say, we hope for the best, and we hope that the rumors get around that the school department's able to pick up on some of these cues. But it didn't give us a sense of comfort, because we knew leaving that call, we were putting a Band-Aid on it, and we didn't know how the kid's day was gonna go the next day. So it really gives us a really sense of comfort that we're able to notify the school, not provide, a lot of information, just saying that, Johnny Jones is a Handle with Care tomorrow. So the school knows that, if Johnny Jones is acting up, and he's typically not a behavioral problem, there's another issue. He had a police interaction. And it doesn't have to be a police interaction, like we think, overdose or, something like that. It could be as simple as a car accident. So, or a domestic, or, we've had overdoses, we've had some sexual assaults. That these kids have been handled with care. So it's something even outside of DCF that the school department would be notified on, that now they're notified. So they can kind of keep an eye on the kids that day. So it provide the services that obviously the police department can't provide. Our program has evolved over the course of 2019, and it's more, really hasn't evolved. The program is the foundation of the program is good. It's just the educational aspect on when we get new officers that come on, how, to bring them up to speed on the program. And it's really just taking that extra step. Maybe they show up to a domestic and, they're asking, well, do the kids go to school here? Or they show up to a car accident and say, oh, the kid's in the district. It's taking that extra step. It's notifying either the lieutenant or myself, who then relays that to the superintendent, who then puts that out to his principals. So we've been happy with the program in Marion. We don't know the amount of kids that that it's helping, but we know we need to do something, and we're happy with the program so far. We're happy that we have the strong leadership of the school, and we thank the district attorney for making this program available.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on how their programs have changed over the period of time and how you've adapted?
So some of the adjustments we've made is, ours is all electronic, so it's through email. So we've adjusted who's part of that group. We've actually expanded that group. When we first started, it was a smaller group, mainly the SRO and the chief of police. However, all police officers are trained now, so they could be the ones sending the email to the group. We want it to go to a larger audience because we want to make sure that information is received. We don't know from day to day if somebody's out or not getting the messages in a timely manner, so we have expanded that group so that we have the assurance that we're getting the information in a timely and efficient manner. We've also incorporated our fire department as well, so now they've all been trained in it. There have been some instances where maybe a child was brought to the ER by a parent and then transported by ambulance, and the fire department knew prior to the police department. So we feel it's important that the police department is part of it as well. The other piece, we also just do the student's name, their age or grade. It goes district-wide because lots of times there's siblings in each of the buildings, but now we actually have them put self in parentheses to give us information. Is there something that happened specifically to this student, or is it something that maybe happened to a family member? They also will provide us with the information even if the student wasn't home. Because certainly if something's going on in that house, that's not the first time it's happened. So we get that notification even if the children weren't home at the time.
Excellent, well, thank you. In regards to, as you've implemented this program, what are some of the challenges that you faced in implementing these programs? And then if with those challenges, how have you overcome those challenges?
I'll take it. Being new to actually trying to, not enforce, that's probably the wrong choice of words, but actually get the word out, because it's very difficult to actually, it's different when you're the school resource officer and you're at the school, where I'm asking fire guys to actually be sensitive to the fact that something's actually going on, and actually getting the information out to them to then have them relay it. It kind of takes a little bit of effort because that's not what they do. We run into buildings that are burning, basically. We're not on the social side. We don't have that drive we want to help people, but we don't know how to help them emotionally. So for me, it's actually getting that information from my fire guys and then passing that along. And then one thing that I know the school resource officers actually do in Brockton is they comb through all of the reports the morning before school. So obviously we had that big fire, if you didn't notice, in Brockton yesterday. And so there were 19 people displaced. So there were clearly children in that as well, and kids that go to the school. So right off the bat, they're looking at those reports to try and figure out, okay, were there children involved here? Are these kids showing up at school today?
It just strikes me as you were mentioning that you're firefighters, you're police officers, you're not in social services, but you're all human beings, and you understand. And we have children, or brothers and sisters and cousins, and so that's the beauty of what you've done here. You're just teaching, encouraging to just be human beings and to go that extra step. And so this is just amazing work. Does anyone else want to talk about some of the challenges they've faced in regards to their specific programs?
Sure. I think the goal for any program you're implementing in a school system is for it to become part of the culture. And I'm sure we all have one, but I have a principal who lives in town, and they listen to the scanner. And they heard there was a car accident at 7 o'clock at night and knew there was kids in the car. And by 7:15, they said, "Have you received the handle of care?" I said, "Whoa, relax." But the bigger point in that story is that it was handle of care clearly is part of our culture, and to not take that for granted. And even though the program may seem simple in nature, the work that it does is extremely complex. And I think you've heard in a few different answers to the different questions how important it is to keep the conversations going when you have rollover in staff or new staff joining the team. And I think there's easy things that you can do in terms of making sure that the conversation continues to be had on a regular basis, whether it's adding it to a standing agenda item on your staff meetings or reviewing data on a regular basis, as Dr. Williams mentioned. I think even if there's not a lot of conversation each and every time, it shows how important Handle with Care is, and it allows people to ask the questions that they need to ask in real time.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. Let's talk in regards to your perspective of how this is working on the ground, and what are the impacts that you're seeing specifically with our student population. Anybody want to step in and share their perspective of how their program is working? Dr. Williams, you're on.
So, I think to echo DA Cruz's sentiments, it really connects you to not only the organizations within your community, but it allows you to expand your resources beyond. Now we're at a point where a situation happens that we're not necessarily prepared for. I have someone that I'm calling, I have someone that I'm emailing, and resources are just flooding in. We work very closely with the Brockton Area Prevention Collaborative, the Plymouth County Outreach, and there's been countless times where I've just sent an email or made a phone call and gave a little help. And resources just come flooding at us. Funding has come flooding at us to have guest speakers and presenters. So now I think the same, it's the culture that's been created, that now we have staff members that are reaching out to us saying, "Hey, do you remember when we had that organization? Or do you remember when we had that person? Can we call them again?" And people reaching out for the help that they know is there, and everybody acknowledging we cannot do this on our own. And it's made it that much more effective for us. One other piece that is going to be a little challenging and frustrating for any community, any district, I know it was in East Bridgewater, is people wanting more information and wanting to know more. And they just need to trust, and over time that gets easier because there is a lot of frustration at first with people wanting more information. But when they see the effects and the benefits that it's having, then they stop asking those questions. So just stand strong on that pushback.
That's an excellent point. Anybody else want to talk about what the perspective from their organization and the impact it's having? Anybody else want to touch this before we move to the next question? Okay. So, do you have any anecdotal evidence that you might be able to share with the audience in regards to the impact that this is actually having specifically on the students? Does anybody have? I think that's anecdotally, I'm sure there are some points that you might be able to, that you've seen over the period of time that you've had these programs. Anybody want to weigh in on that?
Sure. I think what it does, and I appreciated your comments, Dr. Williams, where just what everyone wants more information right away. And what I've learned is most things come to the surface if they need to. But what that initial notification tells you in terms of this is a student who might need a little extra care the next morning or the next time you see them, it prevents a misunderstanding of behavior. And oftentimes just knowing something has occurred that was serious enough for the police department to share that with the school system, it changes, I think, an educator's perspective in terms of making sure that you give that child the benefit of the doubt, whether their hood's up or they say something you didn't expect or whatever else, and it allows you to start having those conversations and give that child some time to be able to go to their go-to person or access the supports they need or present more supports than you would have. I think we talk a lot about the Handle with Care and then what we're going to do for the child the next morning. But, you know, another side of it, it's when you receive a handle with care and that child doesn't show up the next day. And you know, that to me is even more concerning sometimes, because you wonder, well, what is happening, where are they, and what do they need? So hearing that something has occurred, that there is a handle with care, and being able to make sure that you can just get eyes on that child, and if not, that you can start thinking about what you need to do as a school system and with your partners, I think that has really shown itself to be one of the main strengths of this program.
Thank you, Superintendent Nelson. And that's just to follow up on this. I just recall when I was at the conference, there was a teacher who spoke up, and she didn't have this program at the time, and she remembers a student coming in, and the student was disheveled, and it was having all kinds of problems, and a transient student, and she didn't know what to do and didn't really have any knowledge of what to do. And she said, and one day the student wasn't there, and she said to herself, she said, I will never let this happen again. And she went and heard about this program and pursued it so that she could learn what to do. So that student, because she has no idea whatever happened to that student was gone, and it struck her that I didn't do something at the time when I could have, and it changed her and how she dealt with it, and literally built a program from an educator, and that was really moving to me. Anybody else want to talk about anecdotally, specifically, you know, an impact that has come from this Handle with Care program before we finish up? And I do have a tight 9:30, so I want to make sure I don't go over my at 10 o'clock. So I've got 6 minutes left. So.
Yeah, just quickly, just to reiterate, I know, you know, the program's about the students, but, you know, from a police officer's standpoint, you know, our police officers they want to help people. They want to make sure that that child's safe at school. They want to make sure that they're getting the resources necessary. So, you know, our officers are not left now saying, you know, wondering what happened to that student. You know, now we have peace of mind because we know we have a policy, we have a procedure, we have a program in place, and we trust the school that they're going to provide those resources necessary. So from a police officer's standpoint, you know, they're left, you know, so they don't have to wonder. So it's peace of mind to us. Obviously, the student is benefiting from this program, but, you know, just the police officers benefiting from this program as well, because for the peace of mind standpoint.
That's an excellent point.
And I think you just need to balance your response. You know, sometimes it's just making sure somebody puts eyes on that student, says hello, good morning, checks in with them. Oftentimes our school resource officer reaches out to families and says, you know, would you like me to provide a little bit more information to the school so that they can provide that support? And at first we thought the overwhelming response from families would be no, we don't want them knowing. But the majority of the time they're saying yes, you can let the counselors know, you can let them know that, you know, that they're having a hard time, they can call them down. So sometimes we're deliberate in our interactions, and sometimes it's a little bit more nonchalant, just making sure somebody has said hello. And most often students will open up as soon as somebody says, how are you doing? How was your day? So.
Did you want to weigh in before?
No, I
Okay,
haven't
fair
been doing it
enough.
long enough to have some good comments, you know,
Okay.
unless you want to just ramble like
Well,
that.
please. Let's give a thank you to the panel for giving us some